Iran dominates the headlines. Wars, threats, secret alliances, nuclear plans. But few realize its story was written long ago in the Bible. From the first pages of Genesis in the Bible to the final visions of Revelation, the end time, Iran appears under its ancient name, Persia. The Bible doesn't just tell us how Persia began, it reveals its final role in the last days. In Revelation, Persia joins a deadly coalition in the war of Gog and Magog, rising against Israel. But Persia wasn't always a threat. It once set God's people free, helped rebuild the temple, and fulfilled the prophecies of Daniel. Stay with me until the end, because today we'll uncover Iran's real place in God's plan, from the very beginning to the end. Let's dive in. It all starts in the book of Genesis when God gives humanity a second chance thought, the lineage of Noah. Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, became the forefathers of new nations. From them, the coastlands were populated, each according to their own languages, families, and nations. Among their sons, two names stand out, two ancestors of what would later become the Persian Empire, Madai and Elam. Madai is the son of Japheth. From him came the Medes, a people who settled in the northern mountains, a region that is now part of modern-day Iran. These mountain tribes grew slowly, building villages and forming strong clans. They were tough, independent, and well-organized. Madai is seen as the ancestor of the ancient heartland of northern Iran. Elam was the son of Shem. His descendants settled in the rich lands of southwestern Iran, near the Persian Gulf. But when the population grew, came the war's four eastern kings, including Chedorlaomer, king of the Elamite, joined forces and invaded the land of Canaan. They destroyed cities, enslaved people, and even took Lot, Abraham's nephew, as a captive. Elam was not a weak or unknown tribe. It was a strong kingdom, the first in Scripture to go to war against God's people. But Abraham didn't stay silent. With only 318 trained servants, he chased down the invaders, attacked them at night, and won. He rescued Lot, freed the prisoners, and defeated the eastern kings. It was a victory that showed something clear. No power on earth can overcome those who have the favor of God. But the story of Elam didn't end there. They didn't vanish. Centuries passed, generations came and went, and the tribes once defeated by Abraham grew stronger again. The Elamites and the Medes shared the same land, the ancient terrain of eastern Mesopotamia. One dwelled southwest in the fertile plains of Elam. The other inhabited the mountainous north, where the harshness of the region forged the character of the Medes. Together they formed a united power, an empire, the Persian Empire. Though they were pagan nations, they were never outside God's plan. Through the prophets Isaiah and Jeremiah, two great prophecies concerning them were declared. The first prophecy revealed that God would use Persian as instruments to punish Babylon. Babylon, who had destroyed Jerusalem and burned down its temple, would not escape judgment. Yet the second prophecy was even more astounding. God would not only use Persia to bring punishment, he would also wield Persia as an instrument of liberation. God announced through the prophet Isaiah that an unborn pagan king would free Israel from exile and decree the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. Isaiah called him by name more than 150 years before he was even born, Cyrus, and both prophecies came true with terrifying precision. In the 8th century BC, Deioces, king of the Medes, united the tribes of Elam and Madai, founding the first imperial capital, Ecbatana. His grandson, Cyrus, took the next great step, reforming the army and turning it into a war machine strong enough to destroy Nineveh, capital of the Assyrian Empire, one of Israel's most brutal enemies. The prophecy began to be fulfilled. God was raising up Persia from within as his instrument of judgment and redemption. Yet even as Persia grew in power, God had already revealed its destiny through prophetic dreams. and the first to see it clearly was a young Hebrew prisoner living in Babylon, Daniel. It all started when the Babylonian army, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, marched into Jerusalem. The city walls fell, the temple was ransacked, and thousands were carried away into slavery in distant lands. Daniel was among them. He was just a teenager when he was torn from his home and brought to the court of Babylon. But there in the darkness, God chose him. God gave him something granted to no other captive, a gift of visions. Visions that spoke not only about his own time, but about the course of all human history. At the very heart of the empire responsible for Jerusalem's destruction, Daniel began to see how God would raise another kingdom, one destined to replace Babylon and play a crucial role in the fate of his own people, the Persian Empire. And it all began with dreams. While Daniel served in Nebuchadnezzar's court, the king was deeply troubled by a disturbing dream. A giant statue, crafted from different metals, towered before him, radiating an indescribable glory and menace. Terrified, the king demanded not only someone who could reveal it without first hearing it. None of Babylon's the 3 wise men could accomplish this task. But God's prophet was ready, and they brought Daniel before the king. With the authority of heaven, Daniel stood before the powerful ruler and revealed what no Babylonian wise man could unravel. He described the dream exactly and proclaimed a revelation that would forever change the world's destiny. You, O king, are the head of gold. But after you, another kingdom will rise depicted by the chest and arms of silver. The prophecy was clear. Babylon would fall, and the throne would pass on to a new empire chosen by God. The Persian Empire, young Daniel, living far from his homeland, watched God's visions come true. The king God had foretold long ago through Isaiah was about to arise from the highlands of Persia. His name was Cyrus. Cyrus, the young Persian king, conquered Media and united the kingdoms into the Medo-Persian Empire. The Persian Empire gradually rose in power until it became the most dominant force of its time. Eventually, its king turned his attention to Babylon. The day spoken of in prophecy finally arrived, though it wasn't a battle like others. One night, King Belshazzar, grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, held a lavish banquet for 1,000 nobles. In the middle of the celebration, he made a shocking decision. He ordered the sacred vessels his grandfather had taken from the temple in Jerusalem to be brought out. Then, using these holy items, they raised their cups to honor false gods. At that moment, a mysterious hand appeared and began writing 4 words on the palace wall: Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. The king's face turned pale. No one could explain the meaning of the message. Daniel was brought in, and he revealed the meaning. God has numbered your days and brought your reign to an end. Your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. As Daniel spoke those words, the prophecy began to unfold. The armies of Cyrus the Great, king of Persia, had already diverted the Euphrates River. That very night, they entered Babylon through the dry riverbed. The gates were left unlocked. God had opened them. King Belshazzar was killed, and Babylon fell to Persia, exactly as foretold. For 70 years, the Jews had lived in exile by the rivers of Babylon. Now, something no one expected happened. A foreign, pagan king allowed them to return to Jerusalem. But Cyrus did more than allow it. He provided funds to rebuild the temple and sent Jewish leaders back with royal approval: Zerubbabel, from David's royal line, and Joshua the high priest. These men laid the foundation of the new temple, restoring the place where God's name once dwelled. Persia, unlike other empires, did not destroy Israel. It helped rebuild it. But God also revealed to Daniel another vision, one more intense and troubling. In this vision, 4 beasts emerged from chaotic waters. The second beast was a bear, raised on one side with 3 ribs in its mouth. A voice thundered, "Get up and eat your fill of flesh." This beast represented the empire that would follow Babylon, Persia. It leaned to one side because Persia would come to dominate Media. The three ribs symbolized Persia's key conquests: Lydia, Babylon, and Egypt, each taken one after the other as Persia expanded rapidly. History confirmed this vision. Persia conquered Lydia in Asia Minor, then Babylon. Next, it moved toward Egypt. Under Cambyses II, son of Cyrus, Persian forces crossed the Sinai Desert and defeated Pharaoh Psamtik III at the Battle of Pelusium. Egypt, longtime oppressor of Israel, was defeated. The third rib had fallen. Years later, Daniel saw yet another vision. This time, it was even clearer. A ram appeared with two horns, one taller than the other, and the taller one came up later. The ram charged west, north, and south, unstoppable. The meaning was explained. The ram represents the kings of Media and Persia. Persia was once again at the center of God's plan, but this time not as a helper of Israel, but as a powerful, conquering force. The detail about the uneven horns revealed something specific. Persia would rise above Media. Though it was a joint empire, Persia held true power. Then another figure appeared in the vision, a goat moving swiftly from the west with a single prominent horn. It attacked the ram, crushed it, and trampled it. This symbolized the next world empire, Greece. Though Daniel didn't know the goat's identity at the time, he understood this. Persia, for all its glory, would eventually fall. But that downfall hadn't happened yet. At its peak, Persia was unmatched. It ruled from India to Ethiopia. During the reign of King Ahasuerus, the throne of the world's greatest empire was in the city of Susa, deep in the land of Elam, modern-day southwestern Iran. And it was there, in Susa, that one of the Bible's most surprising miracles would take place. The mighty Persian Empire, unmatched in power and wealth, was forever changed by the actions of a single woman. The king held a grand banquet that lasted 6 months. Then he invited all the people of Susa to a final 7-day feast. During this celebration, he gave an order. Queen Vashti was to be brought before everyone so they could admire her beauty. But Vashti refused. The king, humiliated in front of his nobles and officials, banished her from the palace. His advisors then proposed a new plan: search the entire empire for a new queen. The most beautiful young women would be taken to the royal palace, where they would undergo a full year of preparation before being presented to the king. Among them was a young woman named Hadassah. She was an orphan, raised in secret by her cousin Mordecai. No one knew her background. In the palace, she was given a new name, Esther. Esther quickly gained the king's favor. Without knowing her origins, he chose her as the next queen. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the palace, danger was rising. A man named Haman, a descendant of Israel's ancient enemies, had climbed to the highest position of power after the king. When everyone was ordered to bow before him, Mordecai refused. Haman was enraged. But he didn't just seek revenge against one man. He plotted to destroy an entire people. He approached the king and spoke of a strange nation scattered across the empire, a people with different customs who, according to him, disobeyed the laws of the land. He convinced the king that they were a threat and secured approval for a decree to wipe them out. The decision was sealed with the royal ring. A date was set. Within a year, every Jew in the Persian Empire, men, women, and children, would be executed. Fear spread quickly. Mordecai sent word to Esther, urging her to act. But approaching the king without an invitation was punishable by death, unless he extended his golden scepter in mercy. Esther hesitated, but she knew what had to be done. She chose to risk her life. Uninvited, she entered the throne room. The king looked upon her and raised his scepter. She had found favor. But she didn't speak out right away. She invited the king and Haman to a private banquet and then to a second one. At the second feast, Esther revealed everything. "If we had only been sold into slavery, I would have stayed silent," she said. "But now, my people and I are to be destroyed." The king was shocked. "Who would do such a thing?" he demanded. Esther turned to Haman. "This wicked man is our enemy." The king rose in fury. Haman fell to his knees, begging for his life. But it was too late. He was executed on the very gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. Yet the danger remained. The original decree still stood. Once issued, it could not be reversed. So Esther and Mordecai proposed a new solution: issue another decree giving the Jews the right to defend themselves. The king agreed. Throughout the empire, the Jewish people prepared. The day meant for their destruction became a day of survival and triumph. What was meant to be their end became their victory. Persia, once the setting of a death sentence, became a refuge. A throne of power had become a shield. After this, Persia slowly faded from the center of history. Kingdoms rose and fell. New empires took control. But Persia was not gone. Generations later, far from the royal courts and ancient wars, Persia reappeared, quietly yet powerfully. The three wise men saw a sign in the sky, a star, and they followed it. They traveled across the desert, across kingdoms, guided only by what they had seen in the heavens. They came in search of a newborn king, not of their own people, but of a people long remembered in their ancient traditions. These men were scholars, priests, and astronomers. Their homeland was likely the same ancient region, once part of the Persian Empire. They carried with them knowledge passed down through generations, writings, signs, patterns in the stars, and prophecies older than any empire still standing. And so, Persia returned, not as a conqueror, but as a witness to the beginning of something greater than empire. They were not kings, but scholars, men respected for their knowledge, authority, and spiritual insight. It's highly likely they studied ancient scrolls, including the writings of the prophet Daniel, who had served in the royal courts of Babylon and Persia centuries earlier. Daniel didn't just interpret dreams for kings. He calculated the precise timing of the Messiah's arrival. If these, the three wise men, understood his visions, they would have known the time was near. So when they saw the strange star in the sky, they immediately recognized it as a sign. The promised child had been born. But what set them apart was their response. They left behind everything familiar, crossed vast deserts, and arrived in ancient Jewish city with three symbolic gifts: gold, representing kingship; frankincense, representing divinity; and myrrh, foreshadowing death and sacrifice. Without realizing it, these men revealed one of the greatest mysteries of all. This child would be a king. He would be God, and he would be a sacrificial lamb. While Jerusalem's religious scholars remained silent and King Herod plotted to kill him, these foreigners from the east became the first to recognize and honor the fulfillment of ancient prophecy. This wasn't a coincidence. It was divine design. Persia, the very empire that once freed the Jewish people and helped rebuild their temple, was now the first to offer honor to their savior. Once again, Persia became an instrument of divine revelation. From the very beginning of redemptive history to the humble birth in a manger, ancient Persia, Iran, was woven into God's plan. But Persia's story in the Bible doesn't end in Bethlehem. Though it once played a role in liberation, prophecy reveals it will also be involved in one of the darkest chapters of the future. Through the visions of the prophet Ezekiel, we learn that Persia will be part of a powerful alliance that rises up against Israel in the last days. This future coalition includes several nations: Persia, or now called Iran, Kush or Sudan, Put or Libya, and regions associated with Turkey and the Caucasus. They will unite under a northern leader, believed by many scholars to represent a figure from the Russian or Eurasian region. This alliance will form a massive military force advancing toward Israel like a storm. but they will not succeed. Their invasion will trigger a dramatic divine response. Earthquakes, fire, confusion among the armies. Amidst the chaos, God's power will be revealed, and His name made known to all nations. So Persia, once a redeemer, will now face judgment. Not because she was forgotten, but because she rises once again against God's will and His people. Few nations in the Bible travel such a complete arc, from creation to redemption to final confrontation. But what is Persia's ultimate fate? Will she be completely destroyed, or is there still a path to redemption? The answer is not spelled out directly, but hidden in the details, it suggests something far deeper and more powerful than many realize. After the fall of this coalition, the aftermath is catastrophic. An army consumed by fire from above, bodies left in open fields, weapons burning for years. The name of the northern leader becomes a symbol of divine judgment. And Persia, as part of this alliance, will not escape that reckoning. Yet here lies a surprising twist, one rooted in a prophecy spoken long ago and nearly forgotten. The prophet Jeremiah once delivered a message about Elam, the ancient region linked to modern-day Iran. It spoke first of judgment. Elam's strength would be broken, but then came an unexpected promise. In the last days, Elam would be restored. This changes everything. Because even though Iran is foretold to rise against Israel in the final days, and even though it will take part in the climactic rebellion that provokes God's wrath, its story doesn't end in destruction. Even in judgment, God leaves the door open for redemption. The Iran we see in today's headlines, aggressive, defiant, entangled in dark alliances, may one day take part in a renewed world. Persia's biblical journey mirrors humanity's own, chosen, fallen, judged, and yet, through grace, restored. That's why Iran's destiny in the biblical narrative stands as both a warning and a promise. A warning to any empire that dares to oppose God, and a promise to all who turn back to Him. Because in the end, the nations will return. They will journey to Jerusalem to honor the true King. And among them, perhaps, will be Elam. A nation once known for redemption, later known for rebellion, may again witness restoration. For in God's heart, there is still room for those who choose to return. From the earliest pages of Genesis to the final visions in Revelation, Persia is present. When humanity emerged from the flood, Elam and Madai were named as ancestors of future peoples, seeds of a future empire. When Abraham rescued Lot, Elam had already become a military power. Later, when Babylon fell, Persia rose, not as a conqueror, but as a liberator. A Persian king gave the order to rebuild the temple, and centuries later, when the Messiah was born, the 3 wise men from Persia were among the first to recognize his arrival. But as the end draws near, the script turns darker. Prophecy describes Persia once again standing at the center of world events, this time as part of an alliance that rises against God's people. Alongside other nations, it will take its place in a global conflict. Yet the story isn't finished. The book remains open. Scripture doesn't shut the door on Persia's future. One day, the nations will return to Jerusalem, not to wage war, but to worship too.
What if the most ancient feud in history isn't just about land, but about something far deeper, a battle foretold in sacred texts thousands of years ago? The Israel-Palestine conflict is one of the most polarizing and debated issues in our world today. For some, it's a matter of politics, a struggle for sovereignty and survival, but for others, particularly those familiar with the Bible, it's a spiritual war that has been playing out since the days of Abraham. 2 perspectives, 1 conflict. What lies at the heart of this enduring enmity? To truly understand, we must look back. The story begins with ancient promises made to Abraham, a man revered as the patriarch of both Jews and Arabs. These promises, recorded in the Bible, speak of land and blessings for his descendants. But who are these descendants, and how did a divine covenant spark such a profound divide? Over time, the promises of the past have collided with the realities of the present, shaping the geopolitics of the modern Middle East in ways that few could have imagined. This exploration will take you through biblical events and prophecies that are deeply tied to the identity of Israel and Palestine, as well as the historical turning points that have fueled the conflict. It's a journey that will uncover how spiritual beliefs intersect with political ambitions, shedding light on why this struggle remains unresolved. If you've ever been curious about the deeper forces at play in one of history's longest-running disputes, stay with us. And if you're intrigued by the connections between ancient texts and the world we live in today, make sure to like and subscribe. Let's step back in time to uncover the roots of this conflict, beginning with a man, a promise, and a question that changed the course of history. Biblical foundations and ancient history. The story of the Israel-Palestine conflict has roots that reach back thousands of years to the time of the Bible. To truly understand this struggle, we need to start with Abraham, his family, and the promises that shaped their connection to the land. It all begins with Abraham, a central figure in the histories of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. In the Bible, God makes a special promise to Abraham known as a covenant, promising that his descendants would inherit the land of Canaan. But Abraham's family story complicates this promise, as he had two sons, Isaac, born to his wife Sarah, and Ishmael, born to Hagar, Sarah's servant. According to Genesis 17:1-19, God chooses Isaac, Sarah's son, as the one through whom this covenant will continue. This decision establishes Isaac's descendants, the Israelites, as the inheritors of the promised blessings and the land. But Ishmael was not forgotten. In Genesis 16:10-12, God promises that Ishmael will also become the father of a great nation. Ishmael's 12 sons, mentioned in Genesis 25:12-18, are believed to be the ancestors of various Arab tribes, forming a vast network of people who spread across the Arabian Peninsula and beyond. These descendants would later form the backbone of the Arab world, which includes the Palestinians. Islamic tradition adds depth to this narrative, viewing Ishmael as the forefather of the Prophet Muhammad and a patriarch of Arab peoples. For Arabs, the lineage of Ishmael ties their identity and heritage to the sacred lands of the region, particularly Mecca, and by extension, other historically significant areas such as Jerusalem. The relationship between the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael is woven with both shared ancestry and tension. While the Bible focuses on the Israelites' covenant, later Islamic teachings emphasize Ishmael's role in God's plan, framing him as a prophet and integral to the spread of monotheism. These parallel yet divergent narratives have sown seeds of both unity and rivalry, which reverberate through history. Generations later, Isaac's descendants form the Israelite nation. Under Kings Saul, David, and Solomon, they unify into a powerful kingdom. David conquers Jerusalem, making it the political and spiritual heart of the nation. Then Solomon, David's son, builds the first temple, a sacred place that becomes the center of worship for the Israelites. During this golden age, it seemed like the promises to Abraham had been fully realized, a united people living in their promised land. However, these achievements did not bring lasting peace. After Solomon's death, the kingdom splits into two, Israel in the north and Judah in the south. This division weakens the Israelites and makes them vulnerable to powerful empires like Assyria and Babylon. In 586 BCE, the Babylonians, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, conquer Jerusalem and destroy the first temple. For the Jewish people, this is more than just a military defeat. It's a spiritual crisis, as they are exiled from the land that was promised to them by God. Yet the Bible frames this exile as both a punishment and a prophetic fulfillment, a theme echoed by prophets such as Jeremiah and Ezekiel. This period of exile is significant because it intensifies the Jewish longing for their homeland and strengthens their spiritual identity. But the story doesn't end there. In 539 BCE, the Persian Empire, under Cyrus the Great, defeats Babylon. Cyrus allows the Jewish exiles to return to their homeland and rebuild the temple. This second temple renews their hope and re-establishes their connection to the land, even as they face new challenges. Meanwhile, the descendants of Ishmael continue to grow in influence across the Arabian Peninsula, establishing trade routes, cultural networks, and spiritual traditions that will later play a significant role in the emergence of Islam. The Bible's prophetic texts also add complexity to this history. Books like Isaiah, Daniel, and Zechariah contain visions of future conflicts and divine restoration centered on Jerusalem. Zechariah 12:2-3, for example, speaks of Jerusalem becoming a cup of trembling for all nations, a prophecy often interpreted as reflecting the city's enduring centrality and contentiousness. These prophecies are key to understanding the spiritual stakes of the land, not just for Jews, but for Christians and Muslims as well, who see in them hints of divine purpose and end times significance. The stories of Abraham's sons and the Israelite kingdom form the spiritual foundation for claims to the land that continue today. For Jewish people, the covenant with Isaac's descendants is seen as proof of their historical and divine connection to the land of Israel. For many Arabs, the blessings promised to Ishmael validate their ties to the same land, especially in Islamic tradition, which holds the land as sacred. These ancient stories, filled with promises and struggles, have evolved into a deep and complex conflict that still resonates in the modern world. This biblical history helps us see how past events influence today's disputes. The promises to Abraham, the rise and fall of kingdoms, and the resilience of exiled people are all threads in a story that continues to unfold. From Roman rule to the Jewish diaspora, the transition from ancient Israel to a dispersed Jewish population begins with the centuries following the Persian Empire's rule. After the Persian king Cyrus the Great allowed Jewish exiles to return and rebuild the Second Temple in 539 before the Common Era, Judea became a province within the larger Persian Empire. The Jews experienced relative autonomy under Persian governance, maintaining their religious practices and rebuilding their cultural identity. During this time, the Second Temple became the focal point of Jewish worship, and many of the traditions and institutions central to Judaism were developed or reinforced. When the Persian Empire fell to Alexander the Great in 332, before the Common Era, the region transitioned to Hellenistic rule under the successors of Alexander, known as the Diadochi. Initially, the Ptolemies of Egypt controlled Judea, followed by the Seleucids based in Syria. The Hellenistic period brought significant cultural and political challenges for the Jewish population. While many Jews adopted Greek customs and language, others resisted, leading to internal divisions. This tension reached a crisis under the Seleucid king Antiochus IV Epiphanes, who sought to impose Greek culture and religion on his subjects. In 167 before the Common Era, he desecrated the Second Temple by dedicating it to Zeus, triggering the Maccabean revolt. The revolt, led by the Hasmonean family, restored Jewish control over the temple and established an independent Jewish kingdom that lasted for about a century. This independence ended in 63 before the Common Era, when the Roman general Pompey conquered Jerusalem, integrating Judea into the Roman Republic as a client kingdom. Initially, the Romans allowed local rulers, such as Herod the Great, to govern under their oversight. Herod, while known for his ambitious building projects, including the expansion of the Second Temple, was also infamous for his harsh rule and allegiance to Rome. After Herod's death, Judea became a Roman province directly governed by Roman officials. Roman rule brought heavy taxation and interference in Jewish religious life. The Romans levied taxes on agricultural produce, goods, and even imposed a poll tax, which created significant economic strain on the population. Additionally, Roman governors often disrespected Jewish customs and practices, leading to widespread resentment. One notable example was the placement of imperial standards bearing pagan symbols in Jerusalem, seen as an affront to Jewish monotheism. The tension between the Jewish population and the Roman authorities steadily grew, fueled by both economic exploitation and religious provocations. These tensions boiled over into open conflict during the Great Jewish Revolt of 66 Common Era. The rebellion was a desperate attempt to overthrow Roman rule and restore Jewish independence. However, the Romans responded with overwhelming force. Under General Vespasian and later his son Titus, the Roman army systematically crushed the revolt. In 70 Common Era, Titus led the siege of Jerusalem, resulting in the city's fall and the destruction of the Second Temple. The devastation marked a turning point for the Jewish people as it ended their political autonomy and initiated a widespread diaspora. Survivors were killed, enslaved, or dispersed across the Roman Empire, further scattering the Jewish population. The destruction of the Second Temple was not only a political catastrophe, but also a spiritual one. Jewish religious practices, which had centered on temple worship and sacrifices, adapted to a new reality. Synagogues became the focal points of community and worship, and the study of Torah took on even greater significance. This transformation helped preserve Jewish identity and culture through centuries of exile. Yet, the hope of returning to Jerusalem, Zion, remained a cornerstone of Jewish prayer and tradition. Biblical prophecies like Ezekiel 36:24, "For I will take you out of the nations, I will gather you from all the countries and bring you back into your own land," kept alive the vision of restoration and fueled Jewish resilience. Meanwhile, Arab tribes in the region remained largely independent. Many engaged in trade, connecting the Arabian Peninsula with the Mediterranean. Some allied with the Romans, while others maintained autonomy. Their influence grew significantly with the rise of Islam in the 7th century, brought dramatic changes to the region. Arab Muslim armies conquered Jerusalem in 637 Common Era during the reign of Caliph Umar, marking the beginning of Islamic dominance in the Holy Land. Under Islamic rule, Jerusalem became a key religious center, associated with the Prophet Muhammad's night journey. The construction of the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount symbolized the city's importance in Islam and added a new layer of religious significance to the contested land. From medieval period to modern Zionism, as the Ottoman Empire declined and the modern age approached, the region of Palestine experienced profound changes. Two powerful movements began to emerge: Jewish Zionism and Arab nationalism. These movements, driven by deep cultural, religious, and political aspirations, would shape the region's destiny. For centuries, the Jewish diaspora had carried the hope of returning to their ancestral homeland. This longing was rooted in biblical prophecies and traditions passed down through generations. The prophet Ezekiel, for example, declared in Ezekiel 36:24, "For I will take you out of the nations. I will gather you from all the countries and bring you back into your own land." Similarly, Isaiah 11:11-12 spoke of God's promise to bring back the scattered remnants of Israel. These words offered comfort during long periods of exile and persecution and fueled the vision of a return to Zion. By the late 19th century, this hope gained new urgency as European nationalism rose and anti-Semitism grew, particularly in Eastern Europe. Pogroms and widespread discrimination forced waves of Jewish immigrants to seek refuge in Palestine, then part of the Ottoman Empire. Theodor Herzl, often called the father of modern Zionism, captured this aspiration in his influential book Der Judenstaat, The Jewish State, in 1896. Herzl argued that only a sovereign homeland could offer safety and dignity to the Jewish people. In 1897, the first Zionist Congress in Basel, Switzerland, formalized these ideas, setting the stage for efforts to establish a Jewish state in Palestine. At the same time, Arab nationalism was taking shape, driven by a desire for autonomy from Ottoman control and resistance to European imperialism. Arabs living in Palestine and the broader Middle East had a deep connection to their land, language, and Islamic heritage. As the Ottoman Empire weakened, Arab leaders and intellectuals began to advocate for greater unity and independence. While Palestine's Arab population was initially small and mostly rural, concerns grew as Jewish immigration increased under the Zionist movement. These concerns centered on preserving Arab identity and land ownership. At the turn of the 20th century, these overlapping aspirations set the stage for conflict. Jewish immigrants, purchasing land from absentee Ottoman landlords, established agricultural settlements. Although legal, these transactions often displaced Arab tenant farmers, creating tensions. These Jewish settlements, known as kibbutzim, embodied Zionist ideals of reclaiming and cultivating the land, but also represented a growing presence that many Arabs saw as a threat. Birth of the modern conflict. World War I brought monumental shifts to the region. The Ottoman Empire's collapse during the war left Palestine under British control, formalized through the League of Nations mandate system in 1920. During the war, Britain issued the Balfour Declaration in 1917, expressing support for a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. While celebrated by the Zionist movement, this declaration was deeply resented by the Arab population, who felt betrayed by British promises of Arab independence in exchange for support against the Ottomans made in the McMahon-Hussein correspondence. These contradictory promises planted the seeds of mistrust and conflict. Under the British Mandate, 1920 to 1948, Jewish immigration to Palestine surged, especially as anti-Semitism and violence against Jews escalated in Europe. The Holocaust during World War II underscored the urgency of establishing a Jewish homeland. Nazi Germany systematically murdered 6 million Jews, along with millions of others, in a campaign of genocide. The horrors of Auschwitz, Treblinka, and other concentration camps shocked the world and highlighted the need for a safe refuge. This tragedy seemed to echo the warnings in Deuteronomy 28:64-65 about the suffering and dispersion of Israel, but also reinforced the hope of restoration found in Isaiah 51:11. Those the Lord has rescued will return. They will enter Zion with singing. Everlasting joy will crown their heads. As Jewish immigration increased, so did Arab resistance. Protests turned into violence, and in 1936, a large Arab uprising against British rule and Jewish immigration broke out. The Arab Revolt lasted until 1939, highlighting the deep divisions between the two groups and the British inability to mediate. While the revolt was suppressed, it left lasting scars and further polarized the communities. After World War II, global sympathy for the Jewish cause grew, driven by the scale of the Holocaust's devastation. In 1947, the United Nations proposed a partition plan to create separate Jewish and Arab states in Palestine, with Jerusalem as an international city. Jewish leaders accepted the plan, but Arab leaders rejected it, viewing it as an unjust division of their homeland. Violence erupted, culminating in the declaration of the State of Israel in 1948. The subsequent Arab-Israeli war led to the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, an event known as the Nakba, or catastrophe. The rise of Zionism and Arab nationalism transformed Palestine into a battleground of competing identities and visions. These movements, rooted in history and deeply held beliefs, collided in ways that continue to shape the region. The struggles over land, identity and sovereignty from this era remain at the heart of the ongoing conflict. Post-war period and the Six-Day War. The Six-Day War of 1967 was a pivotal moment in the Israel-Palestine conflict, reshaping the Middle East and leaving an impact that is still felt today. This short but intense war, fought between Israel and its neighboring Arab states, Egypt, Jordan and Syria, stemmed from unresolved tensions and escalating rivalries that had been building for decades. The roots of this conflict can be traced back to 1948, following the Nakba, or catastrophe, when hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were displaced as a result of the Arab-Israeli war. Refugee camps swelled, and generations grew up in conditions of loss and exile, nurturing a deep sense of injustice. The newly established State of Israel faced immediate hostility from its Arab neighbors, who refused to recognize its existence. These unresolved tensions simmered for years, as Israel sought to secure its borders and Arab states aimed to restore Palestinian lands. By the 1960s, the rise of Palestinian nationalism and the growing influence of leaders like Egypt's President Gamal Abdel Nasser intensified the situation. Nasser, a champion of pan-Arab unity, called for resistance against Israel and sought to unite the Arab world under a common cause. Meanwhile, Palestinian guerrilla groups such as Fatah began carrying out cross-border raids into Israel, leading to Israeli reprisals and escalating cycles of violence. The conflict appeared to be heading toward an inevitable breaking point. Tensions reached a critical level in the mid-1960s. Skirmishes along Israel's borders grew more frequent, and Arab nations increased their rhetoric and military preparations. In 1967, Egypt mobilized its army in the Sinai Peninsula, expelled United Nations peacekeeping forces, and blockaded the Straits of Tiran, a crucial shipping route for Israel. These actions were seen by Israel as acts of aggression, and the region stood on the brink of war. On June 5, 1967, Israel launched a preemptive strike against Egypt, targeting its air force and securing air superiority within hours. The conflict quickly escalated as Jordan and Syria entered the fray. Over the next 6 days, Israel achieved a stunning victory, capturing the Sinai Peninsula and Gaza Strip from Egypt, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria. These territorial gains drastically altered Israel's borders and the dynamics of the region. The capture of East Jerusalem in particular was laden with historical and spiritual significance. For the first time in nearly 2,000 years, Jerusalem's old city and the Western Wall came under Jewish control. Many viewed this as a fulfillment of biblical prophecies. The prophet Zechariah had written, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about. All the people of the earth will gather against it." Zechariah 12:2-3. Similarly, Ezekiel 36:24 echoed in the minds of many, "For I will take you out of the nations. I will gather you from all the countries and bring you back into your own land." While the war was a triumph for Israel, it came at a cost. The occupation of the West Bank, Gaza Strip and other territories presented new challenges. These areas were home to large Palestinian populations who now lived under Israeli control. For Palestinians, The war was a devastating setback. Many were displaced for a second time, and life in the occupied territories was marked by hardship and uncertainty. Palestinian anger grew, and their resolve to fight for self-determination only deepened. The sense of loss among Palestinians was palpable, echoing the warnings in Luke 21:24. Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. The aftermath of the Six-Day War had a profound impact on the broader Middle East. Arab states, humiliated by their defeat, faced internal struggles and began rethinking their strategies toward Israel. The war also set the stage for future conflicts, including the Yom Kippur War of 1973 and the ongoing cycles of violence that persist today. The territories captured during the war remain at the heart of the Israel-Palestine conflict, with disputes over land, sovereignty and security continuing to fuel tensions. The legacy of the Six-Day War is deeply woven into the history of the region. For some, it represents the fulfillment of ancient prophecies and the realization of long-held aspirations. For others, it symbolizes the deepening of historical injustices and the enduring pain of displacement. Understanding this moment is crucial to grasping the complexities of the Israel-Palestine conflict and the broader challenges of achieving peace in the Middle East. Jerusalem as a sacred battleground. Jerusalem has always been at the heart of the Israel-Palestine conflict, not just as a geographical point, but as a sacred battleground cherished by Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. Its profound spiritual meaning, combined with its political and historical significance, has made it a central stage for tension and devotion over centuries. For Jews, Jerusalem is their eternal capital, the site of their ancient temples and the heart of their identity. The Western Wall, a surviving part of the Second Temple destroyed by the Romans in 70 Common Era, remains one of Judaism's holiest sites. Biblical prophecies, such as Zechariah 12:3, describe Jerusalem as a burdensome stone for the nations, symbolizing its enduring role in Jewish destiny and the divine plan. Throughout centuries of exile, the longing for Jerusalem has been a cornerstone of Jewish prayers and traditions. Zechariah 14:2-4 even foretells a climactic event where nations gather against Jerusalem, only for divine intervention to reshape its future. Then the Lord will go out and fight against those nations. His feet will stand on the Mount of Olives. For Christians, Jerusalem is a sacred place tied to the life and death of Jesus Christ. It is where Jesus was crucified, buried, and resurrected, making it the spiritual foundation of their faith. Sites like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the Via Dolorosa attract millions of pilgrims every year, serving as reminders of these pivotal events. In Christian theology, Jerusalem also plays a role in end times prophecies. Revelation 21:2 envisions a new Jerusalem descending from heaven, described as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband, representing a renewed and perfect city in God's ultimate plan for humanity. For Muslims, Jerusalem holds immense spiritual importance as the location of Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, two of Islam's holiest sites. According to Islamic tradition, the Prophet Muhammad visited Jerusalem during the night journey, Isra and Miraj, ascending to heaven from the rock now housed within the Dome of the Rock. Known as Al-Quds, meaning the Holy, Jerusalem has long been a symbol of faith and resilience for Muslims, particularly for Palestinians who see it as central to their identity and aspirations. This profound spiritual significance has also made Jerusalem a flashpoint for political tensions. After the Six-Day War in 1967, Israel captured East Jerusalem, including the Old City, unifying the city under Israeli control. For Jews, this moment was seen as a fulfillment of ancient promises and prophecies, but for Palestinians and much of the Muslim world, it was viewed as an occupation. The status of Jerusalem remains one of the most sensitive and contentious issues in any peace negotiations. On the global stage, Jerusalem's status is a delicate matter. Israel considers the city its undivided capital, while the United Nations and many countries view East Jerusalem as occupied territory, envisioning it as the future capital of a Palestinian state. This duality underscores the city's complex identity as both a unifying symbol for believers and a source of division in global politics. Prophetic interpretations add another layer of depth to Jerusalem's story. Alongside Zechariah's visions, passages in Ezekiel 38-39 describe a future battle involving nations surrounding Israel, often interpreted as a precursor to the Messianic age. Revelation 16:16 references Armageddon, a final confrontation centered around Jerusalem that symbolizes the climax of human history and divine judgment. For many believers, these prophecies provide a framework to understand modern events, intertwining faith with geopolitics. Jerusalem's role as a sacred battleground highlights the powerful intersection of religion, history, and politics in the Israel-Palestine conflict. The city's contested status embodies the broader struggles over identity, sovereignty, and faith, making it far more than just a city. It stands as a symbol of humanity's enduring quest for peace, justice, and meaning. The Israel-Palestine conflict is not just a struggle over land. It is a story that intertwines history, identity, faith, and the human quest for peace. Rooted in ancient promises and historical grievances, this conflict remains one of the most complex and deeply emotional disputes in the modern world. At its core, the conflict is about two peoples, each with deep historical ties to the same land. For Jews, the land of Israel represents the fulfillment of biblical covenants and a refuge after centuries of persecution. For Palestinians, it is their ancestral home, rich with cultural and historical heritage. This dual claim to the land has fueled tensions for generations, exacerbated by wars, displacement, and competing national movements. The modern phase of the conflict began in the 20th century, with the rise of Zionism and Arab nationalism, intensified by British promises during World War I. The establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 was a moment of triumph for Jews, but a catastrophe, or Nakba, for Palestinians. Wars in 1948, 1967, and beyond reshaped the region, displacing millions and creating a legacy of unresolved grievances and mistrust. Jerusalem, with its unparalleled spiritual significance to Jews, Christians, and Muslims, has become a focal point of this conflict. The city embodies the intersection of faith and politics, serving as both a unifying symbol and a deeply contested space. Its capture by Israel in the Six-Day War of 1967 intensified these divisions, as competing claims over the city reflect the broader struggles of the conflict. Prophecies from sacred texts often frame the narrative for believers. For Jews, the prophet Zechariah foretold in Zechariah 12:3 that Jerusalem would become a burdensome stone for all nations, a reflection of its enduring significance and the struggles surrounding it. Similarly, Zechariah 14:2-4 describes a future time when nations will gather against Jerusalem, but divine intervention will transform the city's fate. Then the Lord will go out and fight against those nations. His feet will stand on the Mount of Olives. These visions resonate deeply, particularly in light of the city's long history of conflict and survival. In Christian theology, the hope for a peaceful resolution is often linked to the vision of a new Jerusalem. Revelation 21:2 describes this heavenly city descending from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. This New Jerusalem represents ultimate reconciliation and the promise of peace, symbolizing a world free from conflict and filled with divine presence. Revelation 21:4 continues with a profound promise. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. Isaiah and Micah also envision a time when nations will turn away from violence. Isaiah 2:4 declares, "They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore." Micah 4:4 offers a similarly hopeful image. "Everyone will sit under their own vine and under their own fig tree, and no one will make them afraid." These prophecies reflect the universal longing for peace, where justice and security replace fear and division. But how do we move closer to this vision of peace? Is it possible to reconcile these deep divisions through understanding and dialogue? Resolving the Israel-Palestine conflict requires addressing the deep-rooted issues of identity, sovereignty, and justice. It demands empathy for the historical experiences of both peoples and a commitment to a future where both can coexist in peace and dignity. This vision is not just political, but deeply human, calling for a recognition of shared humanity above division. The story of this conflict is far from over, but its lessons are clear. Peace will not come through force or dominance, but through understanding, compromise, and the shared belief that a better future is possible. What are your thoughts on the role faith and history play in shaping this conflict and its resolution? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to continue exploring these important stories with us. This is the most terrifying part of the Bible, but only for those who defy God. The book of Revelation isn't just a warning, it's a call to be ready. A vision of the world's final days, when chaos erupts, the beast rises, and humanity faces its ultimate test. War, famine, disasters, and deception will consume the earth. The lines will be drawn. Every soul will be forced to choose. And if you are not among 144,000 people who are spared, you may desperately want to know what happens to the rest of the world. Will there be an escape, or will judgment be unavoidable? Today, we uncover 10 of the most terrifying prophecies in Revelation, visions so chilling, so undeniable, they no longer feel like the future but the present. If you find this topic intriguing, consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps us continue bringing you content like this. Now, let's begin. 1. The Seven Seals. Hoofbeats echo across the earth, a distant thunder growing louder closer, then they appear. The first rider emerges, cloaked in white, a crown upon his head, a bow in his hand. He comes as a conqueror, but not with brute force. He deceives, he manipulates, he speaks of peace, but behind his words lie chains of oppression. This is the false savior. Behind him rides the second, draped in crimson, gripping a massive sword. He does not negotiate, he destroys. Nation rises against nation, brother against brother. The world drowns in war. The third follows, cloaked in black, holding a pair of scales. But these are not for justice. They measure survival. Food becomes scarce. The rich grow fat while the poor starve. Famine grips the land, and then the last rider. A spectre pale as death itself, his eyes hollow, his grip cold. Behind him, the grave follows like an open mouth, swallowing a quarter of humanity. These are not myths. These are the first four seals. And when they are broken, the world begins to unravel. In the hands of God, a book lies sealed shut, a scroll containing the fate of the world. No one in heaven or on earth dares to open it, except for one. The Lamb steps forward. A hush falls over heaven as he reaches for the scroll. The time has come. And as he breaks the first seal, the horsemen are unleashed. When he broke the fifth seal, the voices of the martyrs cry out beneath the altar. They were slain for refusing to bow before the beast. Their blood stains the earth. They beg for justice. They plead for vengeance. But they are told to wait. When the sixth seal was broken, the earth convulses. A great earthquake shatters the land. Mountains shift. Islands vanish beneath the waves. The sky turns black. The moon bleeds red. The stars are ripped from the heavens, falling like torches into the abyss. Panic grips the world. Kings and warriors, rich and poor, all flee. They stumble through the ruins, searching for refuge where none can be found. They cry out to the mountains, "Fall on us! Hide us from the wrath of the Lamb." But there is no escape. Then the seventh seal is broken. For a moment, nothing happens. No fire, no thunder, just silence. A silence so deep, so unnatural, that it grips heaven and earth in absolute stillness. The angels do not move. The elders do not speak. Heaven holds its breath. Because what comes next will shake the earth like never before. 2. The trumpets of judgment. The abyss cracks open. From its depths a thick choking smoke pours out, blotting out the sun. Darkness spreads, and then they emerge. Winged horrors, grotesque and unnatural, their faces like men, their teeth like lions, their tails like scorpions dripping with venom. They do not kill, they torment, they descend upon the earth in endless swarms. People scream, clawing at their own skin, writhing in agony. They beg for death, but death will not come. For 5 months they roam, 5 months of pain, 5 months of madness. This is no nightmare, this is the fifth trumpet. Before the abyss was opened, 7 angels stepped forward, each holding a trumpet, and one by one they began to sound. The first trumpet, fire and hail rain down from the heavens. Trees ignite instantly, forests turn to ash, the ground scorched beyond recognition. A third of the earth burns, smoke rises, blotting out the sky. Then the second trumpet. A mountain of fire, a blazing mass, crashes into the sea. The water churns violently, turning blood red. Waves of death ripple outward, ships shatter. A third of all marine life perishes. The third trumpet. A brilliant light streaks across the sky. A star, burning like a torch. It crashes into rivers, lakes and springs. The waters turn bitter. Wormwood. Those who drink it writhe in agony, their last breath stolen by the very thing that once gave life. The fourth trumpet. The heavens dim, the sun, the moon, the stars, darkened by a third. Daylight is weak, night is suffocating. The world is wrapped in an unnatural shadow. And then the worst begins. The fifth trumpet. A great abyss tears open. Smoke billows out, black as ink. And from the pit, the horrors rise. For 5 months, the locusts swarm. Cities fall silent except for the screams. No refuge, no relief. The sixth trumpet. A voice thunders from the altar. 4 fallen angels, bound since ancient times, are released. And with them, an army 200 million strong. Their steeds breathe fire, their riders bring ruin. A third of humanity is wiped out. Then the seventh trumpet, a final sound, louder than thunder, shaking both heaven and earth. The skies burn, the ground quakes. This is no longer just judgment. This is the final warning. And there is no escaping what comes next. 3. The marks of the beast. 666, a number whispered in fear, prophesied for centuries. It is more than ink on skin, more than a mark. It is allegiance, it is ownership, it is a choice. And soon, the world will be forced to decide. A new era rises from the ashes of chaos. The wars have ended. The economies have collapsed. Fear grips the nations. People cry out for order, for stability, for someone to lead them. And then he appears. A leader like no other. Charismatic, powerful, unquestioned. He speaks of unity, of peace, of a future without suffering. The world listens, the world follows, but loyalty has a price. A command is given. Everyone have to take the mark, on the right hand, on the forehead. Without it, you are nothing. You cannot work. You cannot trade. You cannot buy food, water, or shelter. Society moves forward, but only for those who bear the mark. Some embrace it willingly, others hesitate, but fear drives them to compliance. And those who refuse, they are hunted, branded as traitors, outcasts, enemies of progress. They flee into the shadows, living like ghosts, surviving on nothing. But what they do not realize is this: the trap is already set. Revelation is clear. Those who take the mark seal their fate. There is no turning back, and judgment is coming. 4. The 7 bows of God's wrath. The first sign appears on their skin. It starts as an irritation, just a slight burn, a subtle itch beneath the surface. Then it spreads, boils, erupt. Flesh blisters. The stench of rotting wounds fills the air. The pain is unbearable. They claw at their own skin, but nothing stops the agony. These are the ones who took the mark. They thought it would bring them security, power, privilege, access to a future. Instead, it has become a curse etched into their very flesh. This is the first bowl. And it is only the beginning. 7 angels stand before the throne of God, each holding a golden bowl, filled to the brim with divine wrath. One by one they begin to pour. The second bowl. The sea turns to blood. Not a tint, not a trickle, thick, congealed, lifeless. Every creature beneath the waves floats, bloated and rotting on the surface. The oceans, once teeming with life, become a grave. The third bowl, rivers, lakes, springs. The last sources of drinking water turn to blood. There is nothing left to quench the thirst. People stagger in desperation, their lips cracked, their throats raw, but there is no relief. The fourth bowl, the sun, once a source of warmth and light, becomes a weapon. It flares with unbearable heat, scorching the earth. Skin blackens, eyes swell shut. Bodies collapse from dehydration, and yet they still curse God. The fifth bowl, darkness, thick, suffocating, unnatural. It does not merely blind, it crushes. People gnaw their own tongues in agony, choking on their own screams, but still they do not repent. The sixth bowl, the great Euphrates River dries up, paving the way for the final war. Kings march forward, unknowingly walking into their own destruction. The battlefield of Armageddon awaits. And then, the seventh bowl. The air splits with a voice from the throne. It is done. The earth shudders violently, cities collapse, mountains crumble into dust, lightning rips through the heavens, and from above, hailstones, each weighing 100 pounds, crash into the ruins of a world that chose the beast over God. This is no longer just judgment. This is the end. 5. The fall of Babylon the Greased. She stands in splendor, Babylon the Great, draped in scarlet and gold, adorned with jewels. She holds a golden cup in her hand. But it is not filled with wine. It is filled with filth, corruption, and the blood of the saints. The world adores her. Kings bow at her feet. Merchants grow rich from her wealth. Nations drink from her cup, intoxicated by greed and indulgence. They believe she will reign forever. But they are wrong, because her judgment has already been written. From the heavens a voice thunders, "Fallen! Fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling for demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit." And then fire. Smoke rises. The city, once untouchable, erupts into flames. Towers crumble, streets crack open, the wealth of the world turns to ash. The people who once worshipped her now flee in terror. From a distance, the kings of the earth watch in horror. "Woe, woe to the great city," they cry. "In 1 hour, her judgment has come." Merchants weep. Gold, silver, fine linens, worthless. Their fortunes, their luxuries, gone in an instant. The sea captives who once thrived off her riches stand frozen in disbelief. The world's empire has fallen, and then silence. No more music, no more feasting, no more celebration. The lights are extinguished. The voices are gone. Babylon, the greatest empire of men, wiped from the earth in a single day. Because no kingdom stands forever, except one. 6. The Armageddon. A light pierces the darkness, blinding, brilliant. It cuts through the blackened sky like a sword, illuminating the battlefield below. The armies of the world stand ready. Millions of soldiers, tanks, war machines stretching as far as the eye can see. They have come to make war, but they have no idea what they are about to face. It begins with a whisper of wind, then a tremor beneath the earth. The ground shakes, the sky churns, a deafening roar splits the heavens as the armies of the world lift their weapons, eyes filled with defiance. Then the sky rips open. A figure descends, bathed in fire and light, not a king of men, not a ruler of this world, but a force beyond comprehension. His eyes burn like flames. His robe is drenched in blood, and on his thigh a name is written, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Behind him, the armies of heaven ride, no guns, no missiles, only righteousness, justice, and the unstoppable power of God. The kings of the earth stagger in horror, their hands tremble. They thought they were marching to victory. Now they realize they have marched into doom. Then, destruction. Thunder cracks, lightning ignites the sky. A voice booms across the battlefield, shaking the ground beneath their feet, and in an instant, the forces of darkness are undone. Their weapons melt into nothing. Their war machines crumble to dust. The kings of the earth tremble, but it is too late. Swords of divine light strike down rulers. Fire from heaven consumes the wicked. Blood runs in rivers, staining the very soil beneath them. And the great enemy? The beast, the false prophet, the rulers who defied God, seized, judged, cast alive into the lake of fire. The battle ends as quickly as it began. Evil is crushed. The war is over. But this is not just victory. This is the dawn of a new kingdom. 7. The fall of Satan. The battlefield is silent. The beast is gone. The false prophet has been cast into the lake of fire. The armies of the earth lie in ruin. But one remains, the dragon. For too long he has ruled the shadows, whispered into the ears of kings, turned brother against brother. Corrupted hearts and poisoned nations, he has deceived the world. But now his time is up. A mighty angel descends from heaven, his form glowing like fire, his presence shaking the very foundations of the earth. In his hand, an unbreakable chain, forged for a single purpose. The dragon sees him. He thrashes, he roars. The air trembles with his fury, but it is useless. His power is broken. The angel moves with divine force. One motion, one command, and the great deceiver is seized. He fights, he writhes, he screams, but nothing can stop what is coming. Before him, the abyss opens, a chasm of pure darkness, bottomless, eternal, cold. The chains tighten, the dragon is cast down. The pit slams shut. For 1,000 years he will remain locked away. No more lies, no more deception, no more war. The nations will finally know peace, but this is not the end, because one day he will be released, and when that day comes, his final rebellion will seal his fate forever. 8. The final judgment. The books are opened. The dead rise from their graves, great and small, kings and beggars, warriors and merchants. Every soul that has ever lived now stands before the great white throne, and there is no more hiding. On one side, there is joy. The faithful step forward, their faces glowing with light. They hear their names spoken, not with judgment, but with love. The one who sits on the throne smiles upon them, his voice like the sound of rushing waters. Well done, good and faithful servant. Tears fall, but not of sorrow, of relief, of gratitude. Their struggles, their suffering, their pain, all of it is gone. Before them stands a new world, radiant and pure, a new heaven, a new earth. The gates of the holy city swing open, its streets gleaming like gold, its foundations shining with every precious stone. There is no more death, no more sorrow, no more fear. The faithful step inside, embraced by eternity. They will never be apart from God again, but on the other side, there is terror. The condemned tremble as they are called forward. Their names are not in the book of life. Their deeds are exposed, their sins laid bare. They fall to their knees, pleading, weeping, screaming for mercy, but mercy has passed. The voice from the throne is not filled with love, but with finality. Depart from me. I never knew you. And then they are cast out. The lake of fire awaits. A place of darkness, of torment, of eternal regret. They cry out as they fall, but there is no one left to save them. This is not a moment. This is forever. And then it is done. The old world is gone. The pain, the suffering, the darkness, all erased. The heavens roll back like a scroll, and in its place, something new appears. A new heaven, a new earth. A voice from the throne echoes through creation. Behold, I am making all things new. No more death, no more sorrow, no more pain, only eternity. The warnings have been given, the seals have been broken, the trumpets have sounded, the bowls have been poured out. Every prophecy and revelation points to one undeniable truth. The end is coming. Some will ignore it, some will mock it, but others will recognize the signs. Wars, disasters, corruption, deception, none of it is random. The world isn't just spiraling into chaos. It's following a script written thousands of years ago. And now, the question isn't if it will happen. The question is, are you ready? Because Revelation doesn't just speak of judgment, it speaks of victory. Evil will be defeated, the false kingdoms will fall. And for those who stand firm, a new world awaits. One where death is no more, pain is no more, fear is no more. But not everyone will enter. So ask yourself, when the final day comes, where will you stand? If you want to keep uncovering the truth with us, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Because the signs are here, and there's still more to reveal.